when the impossible becomes possible and the unthinkable surfaces from the shadows of America's most notorious unsolved mystery. That's exactly what has the internet in complete chaos as footage allegedly connected to the O.J. Simpson case begins circulating through social media channels and underground networks. The murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman on June 12, 1994, captivated the nation and divided America along racial and social lines in ways that persist to this day. For nearly 3 decades, questions have lingered about what really happened that night in Brentwood, what evidence might have been overlooked, and whether the truth about one of the most scrutinized criminal cases in American history has been hiding in plain sight. Now, with new alleged footage emerging, the case that defined a generation's understanding of celebrity, justice, and media coverage faces renewed scrutiny that could potentially rewrite everything we thought we knew about that fateful night. The O.J. Simpson murder case began on the night of June 12, 1994, when Nicole Brown Simpson, the ex-wife of former NFL star and actor O.J. Simpson, and Ron Goldman, a waiter at a local restaurant, were found brutally murdered outside Nicole's Brentwood condominium. The discovery of their bodies by a neighbor walking her dog launched what would become one of the most publicized and controversial criminal investigations in American history. The crime scene at 875 South Bundy Drive revealed a scene of extreme violence that shocked even experienced Los Angeles Police Department investigators. Nicole Brown Simpson, 35, had suffered a deep knife wound across her throat that nearly decapitated her, along with multiple defensive wounds on her hands and arms that suggested she had fought desperately against her attacker. Ron Goldman, 25, had been stabbed multiple times in what appeared to be a prolonged struggle, with wounds to his neck, chest, and hands indicating he had attempted to defend both himself and possibly Nicole during the attack. The initial police response to the crime scene would later become a source of significant controversy and criticism, as investigators were accused of failing to properly secure the area and preserve crucial evidence. The LAPD's handling of the crime scene, including allowing unauthorized personnel access and failing to collect certain pieces of potential evidence, would become central issues during the subsequent trial and contribute to questions about the integrity of the investigation. The timeline of events leading up to the murders painted a picture of escalating tension between O.J. Simpson and his ex-wife Nicole. The couple had divorced in 1992 after a tumultuous marriage marked by documented instances of domestic violence, including a 1989 incident that resulted in O.J. pleading no contest to domestic violence charges. Friends and family members of Nicole later testified that she had expressed fear of O.J. and concern about his increasingly controlling and threatening behavior following their divorce. The relationship between Nicole and Ron Goldman became a focal point of speculation and investigation, though evidence suggested their connection was primarily professional and possibly the beginning of a friendship rather than a romantic relationship. Ron had come to Nicole's condominium that evening to return a pair of sunglasses that Nicole's mother had left at the restaurant where he worked, a simple errand that tragically placed him at the scene during the attack. Questions arise about what additional evidence from that night might exist beyond what was presented during the original investigation and trial. The implications could suggest that technological advances in evidence analysis and the passage of time might have revealed new information or perspectives on the case that were not available to investigators and prosecutors in the 1990s.
Would you believe that the killings of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman took only a few minutes? The murders were incredibly violent, bloody, and swift.
O.J. Simpson's background as a celebrated athlete and entertainment figure made the case unprecedented in terms of celebrity involvement in serious criminal charges. Orenthal James Simpson in 1947, he had achieved fame as a Heisman Trophy-winning running back at USC before enjoying a successful NFL career, primarily with the Buffalo Bills, where he became the first player to rush for over 2,000 yards in a single season. Following his retirement from professional football, O.J. transitioned into acting and broadcasting, appearing in popular films like the Naked Gun series and working as a television commentator for NFL games. His charismatic personality and crossover appeal made him one of the first African-American athletes to achieve widespread mainstream commercial success, including lucrative endorsement deals with companies like Hertz Rental Cars. The success and public adoration O.J. enjoyed throughout his athletic and entertainment career created a public persona that seemed incompatible with the violent crimes he was accused of committing. This disconnect between his public image and the allegations against him became a central theme in media coverage and public discourse about the case. His relationship with Nicole Brown began in the 1970s when she was working as a waitress and he was still married to his first wife. Their relationship, which began as an extramarital affair, eventually led to O.J.'s divorce from his first wife and his marriage to Nicole in 1985. The couple had 2 children together, Sydney and Justin, whose welfare and custody became additional concerns throughout the legal proceedings.
20 years ago next week, it became a searing American flashpoint. The verdict in the O.J. Simpson murder trial.
The documented history of domestic violence in O.J. and Nicole's relationship provided prosecutors with a potential motive for the murders, though the defense successfully challenged the relevance and interpretation of his evidence during the trial. The complex dynamics of their relationship, including cycles of violence, reconciliation, and separation, reflected patterns commonly seen in domestic abuse situations. The investigation into the murders quickly focused on O.J. Simpson as the primary suspect, based on several factors, including his history of domestic violence against Nicole, his inability to provide a solid alibi for the time of the murders, and physical evidence that appeared to link him to the crime scene. The discovery of blood evidence at both the crime scene and O.J.'s Rockingham estate became central to the prosecution's case. The timeline investigators constructed suggested that O.J. had the opportunity to commit the murders between 9:30 p.m. and 11 p.m. on June 12th, a window during which his whereabouts could not be definitively established. His claim to have been at home during this period was contradicted by the absence of any witnesses who could corroborate his presence there during the crucial time frame. Physical evidence collected by investigators included drops of blood leading from O.J.'s vehicle to his front door, bloodstains on his driveway, and a leather glove found on his property that appeared to match one discovered at the crime scene. DNA analysis of blood evidence revealed matches to O.J.'s blood type, though the reliability and handling of this evidence would become major points of contention during the trial. The famous white Ford Bronco chase on June 17, 1994, when O.J. failed to surrender as scheduled and instead led police on a low-speed pursuit watched by an estimated 95 million television viewers, added another layer of drama and public interest to the case. The chase ended at O.J.'s home where he was arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The discovery of additional evidence during searches of O.J.'s property and vehicle, including hair fibers, blood trace, and other physical materials that appeared to connect him to the crime scene, provided prosecutors with what they believe was compelling evidence of his guilt. However, the admissibility and interpretation of this evidence would become central battlegrounds during the trial. The legal proceedings in the O.J. Simpson case began with his arraignment on July 22, 1994, where he entered a plea of not guilty to charges of murdering Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. The case was assigned to Judge Lance Ito, and the trial began on January 24, 1995, quickly becoming a media sensation that captured national and international attention. The prosecution team, led by Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, built their case around the domestic violence history, DNA evidence, and the timeline they claimed showed O.J. had the opportunity and motive to commit the murders. Their strategy relied heavily on scientific evidence and expert testimony to establish O.J.'s presence at the crime scene and his culpability for the murders. The defense team, famously dubbed the Dream Team, included Johnny Cochran, Alan Dershowitz, F. Lee Bailey, Robert Shapiro, and Robert Kardashian, among others. Their strategy focused on challenging the integrity of the police investigation, questioning the handling and reliability of physical evidence, and highlighting potential racial bias in the criminal justice system. The trial featured dramatic moments that became embedded in American popular culture, including the demonstration where O.J. tried on the bloody gloves in front of the jury, leading to Cochran's famous phrase, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." The defense successfully argued that the gloves appeared too small for O.J.'s hands, though the prosecution contended that the gloves had shrunk due to being soaked in blood. The issue of race became central to the trial's dynamics and public perception, with the defense arguing that O.J. was being framed by a racist police department and prosecution team. The revelation of racist statements made by Detective Mark Furman, who had discovered key evidence, significantly damaged the prosecution's credibility and provided the defense with ammunition for their arguments about police misconduct. The trial lasted 134 days and included testimony from 150 witnesses, making it one of the longest criminal trials in California history. The extensive media coverage included live television broadcasts that allowed the public to follow every detail of the proceedings, creating unprecedented public engagement with a criminal trial. On October 3, 1995, after less than 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty on all charges. The announcement of the verdict was watched by an estimated 150 million viewers and produced dramatically different reactions along racial lines, with polls showing that most African Americans supported the verdict while most white Americans believed O.J. was guilty. The acquittal in the criminal trial did not end O.J. Simpson's legal troubles, as the families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman filed a civil lawsuit seeking monetary damages for the wrongful deaths of their loved ones. The civil trial, which began in 1996, operated under different legal standards than the criminal trial, requiring only a preponderance of evidence rather than proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The civil trial allowed for the introduction of evidence and testimony that had been excluded from the criminal trial, including additional domestic violence incidents and O.J.'s previous statements about Nicole. The plaintiff's attorneys were able to present a more comprehensive picture of the relationship between O.J. and Nicole and the escalating violence that preceded the murders.
O.J.'s trial of the century shocked the nation, particularly when it came to the gruesome details of Nicole Brown Simpson's death.
On February 4, 1997, the civil jury found O.J. Simpson liable for the wrongful deaths of both Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, ordering him to pay $33.05 in compensatory and punitive damages to the victims' families. The different outcome in the civil trial highlighted the distinctions between criminal and civil legal standards and provided some measure of justice for the families. The financial judgment against O.J. Simpson has remained largely uncollected due to various legal maneuvers and asset protection strategies, though the Goldman family has continued their efforts to recover the awarded damages through various legal proceedings over the subsequent decades. The contrasting outcomes of the criminal and civil trials reflected the different evidence standards and jury compositions, with the civil trial jury being more diverse in terms of race and geography compared to the predominantly African-American criminal trial jury from downtown Los Angeles. The O.J. Simpson case occurred during a period of heightened racial tension in Los Angeles, coming just 3 years after the 1992 riots that followed the acquittal of police officers in the beating of Rodney King. The case became a lens through which Americans examined issues of race, class, celebrity, and justice in ways that revealed deep divisions and how different communities viewed the criminal justice system. The defense team's strategy of highlighting potential police racism and misconduct resonated with many African Americans who had experienced or witnessed similar treatment from law enforcement. The argument that O.J. was being framed by racist police officers reflected broader concerns about racial bias in criminal investigations and prosecutions. The prosecution's focus on domestic violence and the scientific evidence was viewed by many white Americans as compelling proof of O.J.'s guilt, and they interpreted the acquittal as an example of racial bias in jury selection and deliberation. The dramatically different reactions to the verdict highlighted the extent to which race influenced perceptions of justice and fairness in the American legal system. The case also raised questions about the role of wealth and celebrity in the criminal justice system, as O.J.'s ability to hire an expensive legal team contrasted sharply with the typical resources available to criminal defendants. The Dream Team defense demonstrated how financial resources could be used to challenge even seemingly strong prosecution cases.
By 1995, the O.J., known for his charm, was in a courtroom charged with murder.
The media coverage of the case contributed to the racial polarization by often presenting the story through frameworks that emphasized conflict and division, rather than seeking common ground or understanding between different perspectives on the dream. Evidence in legal proceedings. The technological aspects of the O.J. Simpson case represented a significant advancement in the use of DNA evidence in criminal prosecutions, though the newness of this technology also created opportunities for the defense to challenge its reliability and the procedures used in its collection and analysis. DNA vintage in the case included blood MPM seized from the crime scene, O.J.'s home, and his vehicle that prosecutors argued definitively linked him to the murders. The analysis showed matches between blood found at various locations and DNA profiles of O.J., Nicole, and Ron, creating what prosecutors believed was an irrefutable scientific connection. However, the defense successfully raised questions about the collection, storage, and analysis of the DNA evidence, arguing that contamination and mishandling could have compromised the results. The relatively new nature of DNA testing in criminal cases meant that many jury members had limited understanding of the science involved, making them susceptible to arguments about potential errors or manipulation. The controversy over the DNA evidence highlighted the importance of proper evidence handling procedures and the need for clear standards in the collection and analysis of biological evidence. The case contributed to improvements in forensic science protocols and the training of law enforcement personnel in evidence preservation. The debate over the DNA evidence also demonstrated how scientific evidence could be interpreted differently by competing experts, with the prosecution and defense presenting contrasting views of the same test results and their significance to the case. Questions arise about what technological advances in DNA analysis and evidence examination since the 1990s might reveal if applied to evidence from the case. The implications could suggest that modern forensic techniques might provide new insights into the evidence that was collected, but not fully analyzed using 1990s technology. The media coverage of the O.J. Simpson case fundamentally changed how high-profile criminal trials are reported and consumed by the public. The extensive television coverage, including live broadcasts of trial proceedings, created a new form of entertainment that blended news reporting with courtroom drama. The case marked the emergence of cable television as a dominant force in news coverage, with networks like CNN providing continuous coverage that attracted millions of viewers and established new standards for breaking news and live event broadcasting. The success of the OJ coverage influenced television programming decisions for decades to come. The role of legal commentators and expert analysis became a standard feature of trial coverage, with networks employing former prosecutors, defense attorneys, and judges to provide ongoing interpretation of trial developments for television audiences. This format became the template for coverage of subsequent high-profile cases. The caseload demonstrated the power of MDI coverage to influence public opinion and potentially affect legal proceedings, raising questions about the relationship between press freedom and fair trial rights. The extensive coverage created celebrity status for many of the trial participants and influenced public perceptions of their credibility and motivations. The emergence of the internet during the mid-90s provided new platforms for discussion and analysis of the case, allowing for more diverse perspectives and detailed examination of evidence than was possible through traditional media coverage alone. The domestic violence aspects of the O.J. Simpson case brought national attention to issues of intimate partner violence and the criminal justice system's response to domestic abuse cases. Nicole Brown Simpson's experiences became a focal point for advocates seeking to improve protection and support for domestic violence victims. The evidence of O.J.'s previous violence against Nicole, including photographs of her injuries and 911 recordings of her calls for help, provided clear documentation of the escalating abuse that preceded her murder. This evidence helped prosecutors establish a pattern of controlling and violent behavior that provided a motive for the murders. However, the defense successfully argued that the domestic violence evidence was prejudicial and not directly relevant to the murder charges, highlighting the challenges prosecutors face in domestic violence cases where previous abuse is used to establish motive for more serious crimes. The case contributed to improvements in how law enforcement responds to domestic violence calls and the training officers receive in recognizing and documenting evidence of intimate partner abuse. Many jurisdictions implemented new policies requiring arrests in domestic violence cases and improved coordination between police and victim services. The Nicole Brown Simpson Foundation, established after her death, and has worked to raise awareness about domestic violence and provide support for victims and their families. The Foundation's work has helped keep attention focused on the ongoing problem of intimate partner violence and the need for continued improvements in prevention and intervention.
It happened the way it happened, and you can't change that. Yeah. Now what we want to do is we want to bring her back.
Legal experts note that the domestic violence context of the case remains relevant to contemporary discussions about how the criminal justice system handles cases involving intimate partner violence and the challenges victims face in seeking protection and justice. The investigation and trial of the O.J. Simpson case revealed significant problems with evidence collection, preservation, and analysis that contributed to controversies about the reliability of the prosecution's case. The Los Angeles Police Department's handling of the crime scene and subsequent evidence processing became central issues in the trial. Failure to properly secure the crime scene and the presence of unauthorized personnel in the area, where crucial evidence was located, provided the defense with arguments about contamination and potential tampering. The lack of proper documentation and chain of custody procedures for some evidence raised questions about its admissibility and reliability. The controversy over Detective Mark Furman's discovery of the glove at O.J.'s residence, combined with revelations about his racist statements, created doubts about whether evidence had been planted or manipulated to strengthen the case against O.J. These concerns highlighted the importance of maintaining integrity in evidence collection and the potential consequences of misconduct. The blood evidence collection and storage procedures used in the case were criticized for failing to follow proper protocols that could have prevented contamination or degradation. The defense successfully argued that these failures compromised the reliability of DNA test results and raised reasonable doubt about their accuracy. The case contributed to significant improvements in forensic science training, evidence handling procedures, and quality control measures in crime laboratories and more recent ones. Many jurisdictions implemented new standards and oversight mechanisms to prevent the types of problems that plagued the O.J. Simpson investigation. The broader implications of the evidence handling controversies extend beyond the O.J. case to highlight systemic issues in how law enforcement agencies collect, preserve, and analyze physical evidence in criminal investigations. The psychological and social impact of the O.J. Simpson case extended far beyond the immediate legal proceedings to influence American culture, race relations, and perceptions of celebrity justice for decades. The case became a defining moment for many Americans' understanding of how race and class affect the criminal justice system. The dramatic differences in how various communities reacted to the verdict reflected deep-seated divisions about police credibility, procedural fairness, and the treatment of African Americans in the criminal justice system. These divisions persisted long after the trial concluded and continued to influence contemporary discussions about criminal justice reform. The case also highlighted the role of wealth and celebrity in accessing high-quality legal representation and the advantages that financial resources provide in challenging prosecution cases. The contrast between OJ's Dream Team defense and the typical resources available to criminal defendants raised questions about equality before the law. The media circus surrounding the trial contributed to public cynicism about the criminal justice system and the role of entertainment values in serious legal proceedings. The transformation of a double murder trial into a form of public entertainment raised concerns about the commodification of tragedy and justice. The long-term effects of the case include ongoing skepticism about the reliability of police investigations, the role of race in jury decision-making, and the influence of celebrity status on legal outcomes. These issues remain relevant to contemporary criminal justice discussions and reform efforts. The families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman have continued their quest for justice and accountability in the decades since the criminal trial.
I would never be wrong.
Their efforts have included not only the successful civil lawsuit, but also ongoing legal and public advocacy to keep attention focused on the case and its unresolved questions. The Goldman family, in particular, has remained active in pursuing the civil judgment against O.J. Simpson and has written books and given interviews to maintain public awareness of Ron's murder and their belief in O.J.'s guilt. Their persistence has kept the case in the public consciousness and provided a voice for the victims in ongoing discussions. Fred Goldman's advocacy work has extended beyond his son's case to include support for other crime victims' families and efforts to improve the criminal justice system's treatment of victims and their survivors. His work has highlighted the long-term impact of violent crime on families and communities. The continuing legal proceedings related to the civil judgment and O.J.'s subsequent legal troubles have provided ongoing reminders of the case and its unresolved aspects. These developments have kept the case relevant to new generations who did not experience the original trial. The family's efforts to preserve the memory of Nicole and Ron as victims rather than simply elements in a celebrity trial have provided important perspective on the human cost of violent crime and the lasting impact on those left behind.
I want to read for you Fred Goldman's statement, right? Fred Goldman, again, who got the gut punch when that verdict was read inside the courtroom.
O.J. Simpson's life after the criminal trial has been marked by continued legal troubles, financial difficulties, and ongoing public scrutiny that has kept him in the news and maintained interest in the original case. His subsequent arrest and conviction on robbery and kidnapping charges in Las Vegas demonstrated that his legal problems extended beyond the murder case. The 2008 conviction and 33-year prison sentence for the Las Vegas crimes provided a sense of justice for many who believed O.J. had escaped accountability for the murders. The irony that he was ultimately imprisoned on the anniversary of his acquittal in the murder trial was noted by many observers as a form of poetic justice. His release from prison in 2017, after serving 9 years of the sentence, renewed public interest in his story in the original murder case. The conditions of his parole and his attempts to maintain a low profile have been subjects of continued media attention and public interest. The financial struggles resulting from the civil judgment and legal expenses have affected O.J.'s lifestyle and public activities, though he has continued to receive income from his NFL pension and other sources. The ongoing efforts to collect the civil judgment have provided regular reminders of the case and its consequences. The impact of the case on O.J.'s children and their efforts to build lives separate from their father's notoriety has been an ongoing challenge that highlights the collateral consequences of high-profile criminal cases on family members who were not directly involved in the alleged crimes. The cultural legacy of the O.J. Simpson case continues to influence American popular culture, legal education, and discussions about race and justice. The case has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, television series, and academic studies that examine its various aspects and implications. The case is frequently cited in law schools as an example of how legal strategies, evidence handling, and jury psychology can influence trial outcomes. The contrast between the criminal and civil trial results provides important lessons about different legal standards and their practical applications. Contemporary discussions about police reform, racial bias in the criminal justice system, and domestic violence often reference the O.J. case as a historical example of systemic problems that persist today. The case serves as a touchstone for examining how these issues have evolved over the past 3 decades.
O.J. Simpson was granted parole today after spending nearly 9 years in prison.
The ongoing fascination with the case reflects broader American interests in celebrity culture, true crime, and the intersection of race and justice. New generations continue to discover and analyze the case through various media formats and educational contexts. The case's influence on media coverage of criminal trials established precedents that continue to shape how high-profile cases are reported and consumed by the public. The balance between public interest and fair trial considerations remains an ongoing challenge in the digital age. Questions arise about what new evidence or perspectives might emerge as time passes and as individuals who are involved in various aspects of the case choose to share previously undisclosed information. The implications could suggest that our understanding of the case and its various elements might continue to evolve as new information becomes available. Technological advances in forensic science and evidence analysis might provide new opportunities to examine evidence from the case using methods that were not available in the 1990s. The potential for new insights from improved DNA analysis, enhanced fingerprint examination, or other forensic techniques could theoretically shed new light on unresolved questions. The passage of time might also encourage witnesses, investigators, or other individuals with knowledge of the case to come forward with information they previously chose not to share. The changing social and legal climate could influence people's willingness to discuss their experiences and observations from the investigation and trial. The ongoing public interest in the case ensures that any new information or evidence would receive significant attention and analysis from both legal experts and the general public. The standards for evaluating new claims or evidence would need to be carefully considered to distinguish between credible information and speculation or fabrication. The legal and practical challenges of revisiting a case that has been formally resolved through criminal and civil proceedings would be substantial, though the possibility of new evidence or information continues to generate interest and discussion among those who remain unsatisfied with the existing conclusions. If you're as fascinated by the enduring mysteries and unanswered questions of the O.J. Simpson case as we are, go ahead and like this video. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What aspects of the case do you think remain unresolved? How do you view the different outcomes of the criminal and civil trials? We want to hear your perspective on this case that continues to captivate America decades after the murders occurred. Then, hit subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss our coverage of true crime cases and the legal and social issues they illuminate. Thanks for watching.